Miami Dolphins owner Stephen Ross set expectations for head coach Mike McDaniel and general manager Chris Grier, including that this season, Miami wins its first postseason game in 25 years. No team has gone as long without a playoff win as the Miami Dolphins. After having bottom 5 draft capital for 3 straight seasons, the Dolphins have above average draft capital this season. In fact, the Dolphins have almost as much draft capital this year as they had in 2022 and 2023 combined. Their offensive line crippled the offense last year, and they have just lost their best offensive lineman to retirement in Terron Armstead. Their line this year is considerably worse on paper than last year's line, and last year's line was pretty bad. They ranked number 28 in pass blocking, number 26 in run blocking, number 32 in running back stuff rate, and number 31 in short yardage conversion rate. So, Rich, Miami finally has draft capital this year after having number 32 2 years ago, number 32 3 years ago. Now they've got above average draft capital. What do they need to come out of this draft with to change the fortunes of this team?
Yeah, Miami's the real cautionary tale, and how aggressively to push the chips in given where they are right now, because now both their GM and head coach got their feet against the fire, even though they, from a wins perspective, they've been largely fine these past 3 years under Mike McDaniel. It's been the punching up aspect and then the continual decline of what McDaniel's bread and butter is on the offensive side of the ball that is kind of impacting where the expectations are now saying, hey, you're on the hot seat now. And you look at what this offensive line has, how it's deteriorated and how it's impacted the offense. I mean, Tua Tagovailoa threw the highest rate of passes at or behind the line of scrimmage of his career last season. It was at 31%. In his first year with Mike McDaniel, it was only 17%. Then it was 27%. It's almost doubled in just a 3-year span. He was 34th in the league in rate of passes to go 10 or more yards downfield. His first year with Mike McDaniel was 44.8%. Last year it was 27.1%. He was dead last in rate of throws to go 20 or more yards downfield. As a result, the Dolphins only had 3 passing touchdowns from outside of the red zone last year. Like, this is a team with way too many playmakers and explosive playmakers to not create those types of plays. And it all comes back to the offensive line. They couldn't keep anyone healthy. They were subpar and then couldn't keep anyone healthy, right? Like, their most frequent offensive line combination, 35% of their offensive snaps. Terron Armstead missed 2 games. He's now retired. Austin Jackson at right tackle missed 9 games due to injury. And Austin Jackson's a guy that they didn't even really hit on in the draft that they extended. They draft Patrick Paul in the 2nd round last year. He's now thrown into a starting left tackle job in the NFL. He did play 248 snaps at left tackle as a rookie, but he also was 68th amongst tackles and pressure rate allowed as a rookie. He was 82nd out of 85 qualifying tackles and grade at PFF. They did add James Daniels, which was an upgrade over what they had, and they still have Aaron Brewer at center, which are 2 positive interior pieces. But even from a contractual stance, Liam Eichenberg's in the final year of his contract, so they have to attack offensive line early in this draft, and I think we're going to see them draft multiple offensive linemen.
Yeah, we know that Tua gets rid of the ball super quickly, but last year, even though they were doing that, they were so predictable because that target depth has been decreasing and they've been throwing all those short passes. And of course, we were taking advantage of that with some of the player props to the tight ends in terms of the catches, because they're just throwing it underneath to guys that really shouldn't be targeted nearly as much as they were, just because that offensive line was so terrible and Tua was still getting a lot of pressure. Ray, what do you think some of the biggest areas of need are for the Miami Dolphins, whether it's offense or defense?
We saw the running game struggle, which is not something we would expect given, the history we've seen with Mike McDaniel and that, and where he comes from. And we saw just the absolute efficiency destruction of Devin Achane, right? And what we saw, and you mentioned, we were happy to bet Devin Achane over on receptions, and that really paid good dividends for us. But why they were doing that is because they just couldn't get him going in the running game. So it was tough. And then you talk about the offensive line and you say, okay, well, if that's their one concern, given they have 10 picks, I believe, then okay, maybe we can fix that. But then you look at defense, and the defense is just, it's not in a good spot at all. And we talk about the defensive line. They probably have one starter level player there with Seiler. And so that's a good spot, with him, but you need some additions. You lose, Calais Campbell, you lose Deshaun Hand. You look on the edge, and if you just kind of like take a 10,000 foot view of the edge, it looks pretty good. They really hit on Chop Robinson, Penn State legend. Chop Robinson, thank you very much. 17.2% pressure rate as a rookie. That's sandwiched between Micah Parsons and Nick Bosa. That's where you want your guy to be. And then they also have Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, but Chubb, coming back, didn't play last year. Phillips suffered another injury last year. He's on his 5th-year option. You have no long-term, stability there with Phillips, and you don't know how good those guys are going to be. That's another area you could point to. Is this a need? And then the secondary, it's just with what they lost in free agency with Javon Holland and Jordan Poyer. Poyer still is a free agent. Maybe he comes back. And now with this Jalen Ramsey stuff, you say, what even is this secondary? Who's going to start in this secondary? They do have, a good slot corner there with Kohu, but he's also entering the final year of his contract. So there are so many needs along the defensive side. And if we were just talking about the offensive line and saying, all right, we get this offensive line better, we figure out how to make Tyreek Hill happy, I guess, we get, Devin Achane back to what we saw as a rookie, and then maybe we're cooking a little bit, but you're gonna have to use so many picks on the defensive side of the ball. You're gonna have to really hit on those picks for this defense to be what you need it to be. And you start to look at this team, and I was surprised. I didn't think, they're coming off a bad year. We obviously know they have issues, but I was surprised how bad it was really on defense when I dug deep. And we're in, they're on this list for a reason. We're in a bad spot here with the Dolphins, and kind of looking forward to the future and what this team is going to look like, who's going to be in charge of this team in a couple of years. This is a very pivotal moment for them heading into this draft.